All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about accounting theory. And look, I know what you might be thinking, but trust me, this is way more than just spreadsheets and tax forms. This is actually a story about human civilization, about innovation, and really about how we learn to trust each other over vast distances. I mean, seriously, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Some bookkeeper from an old movie, maybe with a green visor, just crunching numbers? Or that really technical class you had to suffer through in college? For a lot of us, it feels like this very modern and, yeah, maybe a little bit of a dry subject. But the real story is so much cooler. The history of accounting is really the history of problem solving. We're talking about an epic that starts at the dawn of civilization, created to solve some of the most fundamental challenges that we faced as people. So our story kicks off with the very first big challenge. How do you just keep track of stuff? Let's call this first chapter, The Art of Keeping Score.
Just try to imagine it. You're living in an early farming society. You've got grain, you've got livestock, you've got some tools. Well, as communities get bigger and trade starts to happen, just trying to remember everything isn't going to cut it anymore. You need a system, a reliable way to answer the big questions. What do I have, and what do I owe?
And this is exactly how it all started. I mean, the earliest proof we have is from Mesopotamia, way back around 6000 BC, where people were literally etching records onto clay tablets. But the real game changer, that came in 13th century Italy with the invention of double-entry bookkeeping. For the very first time, you had this self-checking system that could track not just what you had, but how your wealth was changing. That one innovation, it laid the groundwork for all of modern commerce. And by the 19th century, this practical art was becoming a full-blown profession.
Okay, so let's jump forward to our next chapter. Because the Industrial Revolution comes along and just changes everything. And you know what? Accounting had to change with it, and it had to change fast. Suddenly, a brand new problem pops up, and it was a big one. How do you possibly manage these gigantic companies when the owners aren't the ones in charge anymore? All of a sudden, you've got factories, railroads, huge corporations funded by thousands of different investors. The people who actually own the company, the shareholders, they weren't running the day-to-day operations. And that created a massive information gap.
This whole idea has a name, absentee ownership, and it creates this huge problem of trust, right? How do the owners, who are scattered all over the country or maybe even the world, know that the managers are actually doing a good job? How do they know they aren't just, running off with all their money?
The answer was a whole new purpose for accounting, something called stewardship. The accountant's job was now to be the guardian, the steward of the owner's money. The reports became this bridge of trust, giving a clear, honest picture of what management was doing with the company's assets.
But, for that bridge of trust to actually hold any weight, you need rules. You need standards and ethics. So this is the moment we see the rise of professional accounting groups. It starts in Scotland in 1854 and then in the US in 1887. And these weren't just some social clubs. They were creating the rules of the road, the very reputation for integrity that made our modern economy even possible.
So, for centuries, accounting was seen as this practical art, a skill. But in the 20th century, something really big happened, a huge intellectual shift. People started to see it not just as an art, but as a science.
Just take a look at this classic definition from the AICPA back in 1941. See that word right there? Art. The entire focus is on the process, the technical skill of recording stuff that's already happened. It's all about looking in the rearview mirror.
Okay, but now fast forward just 25 years. It's 1966, and the American Accounting Association comes out with a totally new definition, and the focus flips completely. It's not just about recording the past anymore. Now, it's about communicating economic information to permit informed judgments and decisions. The focus shifted from the how to the why. It's all about helping people make better choices for the future.
And that is the absolute key takeaway here. The whole philosophy changed. Accounting was totally reimagined as this dynamic information system designed not just to report on what happened, but to actively shape the future by giving people useful data to make decisions. And this diagram right here, it looks a little busy, but it perfectly illustrates this new way of thinking. It shows accounting as a system, like a machine for turning raw data into actual useful knowledge. See? It's not some dusty old ledger anymore. It's an information engine. So let's break that engine down. It's actually pretty simple. You start with the inputs. That's every sale, every purchase, every single transaction. Then comes the processing.
That's the classic accounting work of recording and sorting all that data. But the whole goal is the outputs, the financial statements and reports. And who are they for? The users, the people who need that info to make smart decisions.
And that's the real kicker. The users weren't just those absentee owners anymore. Now it was managers, investors, governments, even the general public. The whole purpose of accounting got so much bigger. It went from just protecting the owners to a much grander mission, empowering everyone with good information.
So after this incredible journey, what does that leave us? And what could possibly be next?
We've seen how this all started, right? As a simple, practical art born from this basic human need to just keep score in the ancient world.
And we've watched it evolve into this incredibly sophisticated information science. It's literally the language of business, a critical tool that shapes the huge decisions that define our entire global economy.
Which really brings us to one last thought. If you look back, accounting has always evolved by solving the biggest problem of its time. So today, in an age of AI, blockchain, and just this overwhelming flood of data, what's the next great problem that accounting has to solve? What is its next chapter even going to look like? Now that's something to think about.